Yes, freeze! Principles are paramount to building a strong system of ethics. When you have weak principles, you easily lose sight of staying true to your core values. When that core is lost, people try to make the ends justify the means. People trade utilitarianism for principled virtues. People initiate violence because they think it justifies stopping some greater possible harm.
It's okay to take your money if it means giving it to poor people.
It's okay to force you to have an abortion if it means preventing overpopulation. It's okay to beat my son if it means he'll grow up to be a respectful adult. I was beaten as a kid and I turned out fine. Look at me. It's okay to have the government build a wall if it means we protect our culture. It's okay to take your land if it means using it for economic development. In libertarianism, it's important to remember that the goal is to maximize consent and minimize the initiation of violence. Don't be like the state and make exceptions to the foundations of liberty. Be true to your virtues. Yes, freeze!
Is your child defiant, independent, annoyingly inquisitive? After a long, hard day of following the rules, who wants to deal with troublesome kids? 49% of children suffer from oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. Symptoms of ODD include independent thought, rampant creativity, and failure to submit to authority. But now there's a solution. The good people at Pilfer can help you with their time-release, once-daily capsule, Complyacin. Your child won't be able to form his own opinions, let alone express them. It maintains your child's ability to go to a state-run school and perform simple tasks around the house. You won't have to worry about parenting, and the school won't have to deal with your kid asking questions. Complyacin. You'll go from this.
Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do!
To this.
Good morning, Mother. I love going to school. And this week we're learning all about how the government is our federal family and they're here to help us.
Complyacin. Talk to your school psychiatrist and ask for it by name.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network on theconsciousresistance.com and theseedsofliberty.com. The Peaceful Anarchism podcast is covered by the BIPCOT No Government License. This allows for reuse by anyone except for governments and the agents thereof. You can find out more information for this at bipcot.org. So today we have the Philosopher coming in from the United States. You can find her on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Steemit. So Steemit also the Philosopher on Steemit? I assume? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, good. So yeah, all those, mainly she's on YouTube and Facebook, though. I guess more on Facebook a little. The Philosopher. That's Pholosopher, the Philosopher, but of course pronounced the Philosopher. So, so she makes some awesome videos about anarchy and voluntarism. So we'll talk about a little bit about how she came to voluntarism, her path, what influenced her, what podcast, books, personalities influenced her, as well as why she started the whole YouTube channel and Facebook page, and maybe delve into a couple of her videos. A couple of them, like on gun control, the minimum wage, how to learn Cantonese phrases, and another one, why focus on principles. So those are some awesome topics. So thank you. Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Oh, no problem, Danilo. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I saw you on Anarchast, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Because
cool.
I follow Jeff a lot, and I get a lot of inspiration about who to interview, and I've got some great guests from watching his show, and and I saw you're a small channel, a small Facebook page, right? You just recently started, and I love supporting small channels and Facebook pages and podcasts because not yet a podcast, but because we all were there, right? Just starting, and it's nice to have a boost and help each other out when we can. So I would say the rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So please explain a little bit about your path to voluntarism. What got you interested in this philosophy?
Probably the two biggest influences, this was about a few years ago, was my boyfriend at the time. We'd been dating for like 3 or 4 years, and also Stefan Molyneux. Probably my boyfriend introduced me to Stefan Molyneux by just showing me a super long, like 1 hour Bitcoin video. I was like, what is this? This is so boring. And like, it's like, why are we watching this? Like, it's kind of funny how like my mindset has changed so much in my psychology. But I started listening to Stefan's call-in shows, and you know, it really resonated with me. A lot of listeners who would call in about their relationships with family and parents and friends, particularly the dysfunctional ones, the ones that were shameful. And that really, you know, spoke to me because I was going through a lot of the same thing. And then within those call-in shows and watching other videos of his, because I got really interested in what this guy had to say, because he sounded really logical and clear, and he knew himself and understood like psychology and relationships. So I started on that whole path, and voluntarism was, how do I say it? It just went along with it. They pair really well together. So yeah, that's how I started, and discussing with my boyfriend at the time, like all the different things we were hearing from Stefan and what it means to be a voluntarist. And yeah, so that's how I got started.
Yeah, Stefan Molyneux was also a big influence in my life as well, on my path, because when my son was born in 2010, my wife sent me a video of his, which was like 17 reasons why you shouldn't spank your child.
Cool. That's awesome.
And yeah, and so I started
Cool.
from that perspective, from the peaceful parenting perspective.
Yeah.
And then I absorbed everything else that he had on his channel, including voluntarism, anarchism, and economics and morality and all that.
I see. Wow.
And it's interesting that before we had kids, I remember talking to my wife and saying, so if our child is bad, we're gonna spank him, right? And she's like, yeah, you know, we were spanked, yeah. But and it's interesting that I didn't give it much thought. You know, like I think it's easy for people to raise their kids the way they were raised because that's all they know.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you don't give things much thought, you know, you're liable to commit the same mistakes. And so I'm very happy and grateful for Stefan Molyneux for discovering that. And so it doesn't matter how much I write, how many videos I make, how many likes I have on Facebook. My wife always likes to tell me, I got you into this stuff. It's because of me that you're into this.
That's funny. Is she into it too? Like, did she also go into the anarchy and
not as deeply as I did? I'm much more passionate. I did all the reading. I listened to all the podcasts. She's more.
Well, hey, the peaceful parenting is enough, I think.
Yeah, we're both on board with that, definitely, and the homeschooling basically, and the unschooling aspect, and yeah, you know, the basically respecting the self-ownership of children, and you know, circumcision, all that kind of stuff. So on that, we're
That's
pretty
great.
much on the same page, and so yeah, I'm grateful for her.
Cool, that's awesome.
So why did you what got you interested in starting this YouTube channel? You know, why did you name it that? Actually, maybe we'll start there.
All right. Just threw a couple questions at me. I'll
Sorry.
So no, you're fine. Don't be sorry. I'm just teasing. So the name Philosopher, I mean, I love philosophy, and if you look at my page and like everywhere I post something, pretty much, I always sign off with like the Philosopher. Philosophy is my core. Reason and evidence are my foundation.
That's great. I love
and
it.
I forgot the last part. I think it's like I love pho. Or no, sorry, pho is my sustenance.
Yes.
Something about pho.
That's it.
So I seriously, like, I love pho. Ask any of my friends and family. They'll be like, yeah, Michelle, pho was like her go-to food, like from childhood to now. So, and I love philosophy. So Philosopher. I'm the Philosopher. And yeah, it was unique. No one else had it. Although actually I looked on Facebook, someone did, but it wasn't the same thing as me. So it wasn't really like popular or anything. So I took it. took it.
So
Intellectual property.
I was gonna say, so you didn't ask for what do you get? What's it?
Fuck that.
Permission.
You don't own a word.
I know exactly. Come at me with everything you got. All right, go ahead.
But yeah, and then I started it because I just wanted to. I had a lot of things that I want to say, and I just wanted a way to share my ideas. So yeah, I thought I would try making videos and improve my public speaking in the process. So yeah, I just want to help. Oh, sorry, I'll just finish. But like I just want to help, spread liberty, and really admired all the people that had turned me on to liberty, like Stefan Molyneux, Adam Kokesh was one, Jeff Berwick. So yeah, Tom Woods now. So I just really admire what they're doing because it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing as well, to speak about anarchy, because you get a lot of vitriol thrown at you, and you can lose friends and strain relationships in the process, just because you're bringing up topics that go against people's like foundations of what they were indoctrinated with as kids. So it takes a lot of courage, but I think it's a necessary thing. And after I learned about liberty, particularly voluntarism and what it means to have consent in a relationship, and beyond that too, like how to have a good relationship with someone, one where you're philosophical, you're honest. Like those were the virtues that I didn't really have modeled for me growing up as a kid. So when I discovered those, it was like my eyes opened and I was like, holy crap, there's this beautiful world of love, like true love, like love based off of virtue, based off of safety, not based off of, oh, well, I've known you for so long, so that's why I love you. We have all these memories, but it's not based on character or anything. So yeah, and that's what I want to help spread, because I'm really passionate about, learning about this stuff, and particularly learning about myself and self-knowledge, which I always talk about, has done for me in terms of improving my relationships and my mental health. So, yeah.
Nice. So it's been a self-therapeutic path, basically, it sounds like. And with me as well, philosophy was a big part of my intellectual development, even before I got into voluntarism. Like as a teenager in high school, I was very much into Eastern and Western philosophy, both. And so I read a lot of like Schopenhauer, a little bit of Immanuel Kant, some Voltaire, Aristotle, Plato, about Socrates. Socrates didn't write anything. But then I got into Eastern philosophy through the Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching, and that's why after reading that book, that's why I studied acupuncture and Chinese herbs, and Eastern nutrition, and then,
I see.
Yeah, and now I've heard it mentioned that Lao Tzu is basically regarded as the first libertarian or anarchist.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Right. He held the individual above anything else instead of like society or the collective. So.
Yeah, and his reverence and respect for the natural order of things, for laissez-faire, for hands-off.
Right. Yeah.
One of his quotes is, "A ruler should rule the way you cook a small fish." Right, which is very lightly, right? Because if you're too vigorous with the fish, it will fall apart. So basically, don't touch it. Basically, don't touch it. Just let it let it cook by itself.
That's an interesting metaphor, analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those. I don't know. But yeah, that kind of stuff, and the idea of the Tao and how it's just and the soft overcomes the hard. And the idea of yielding and all these kinds of concepts I think are really parallel to voluntarism in that, to me, the soft overcomes the hard. The soft meaning philosophy, economics, and morality, which everybody thinks, what do those matter? Those are just concepts. They don't exist. Why do we even need to talk about this stuff? We focus on reality. We need to make sure we elect somebody who's going to make a difference. And so basically philosophy was a big thing with me. And so
it's funny because what you're talking about is reality.
Yeah, exactly. And I did a post recently about that, specifically discussing that, saying that we all act based on our thoughts and philosophy and morality, right? So if you appeal to people's philosophy and morality, then you will necessarily change reality. You will change people's minds, people's paradigms. That's how you make true change, right? If you're just trying to elect another politician to do whatever you think he should do, you're just basically doing window dressing. You're just superficial. It's just superficial changes, right? You're not affecting the minds of the people. That's what you need to focus on. You really want to make real change, affect the minds of the people. Because again, where does power come from? People. One criticism I get for people who criticize voluntarism, they say, well, if there's nobody, if you take away the ruler, it's just going to be chaos, and then somebody's going to come to power and rule over you anyway. But then you have to figure out, wait a minute, where does power originate? It's not like this. It's not like a bunch of horses. Somebody just gets the reins, and no. Everybody who pays attention to these people collectively, that's where the power originates, right? So that's why it's so important to appeal to the people and saying, you know what, don't give these people your attention. Don't give them your, go ahead. Sorry.
That's a really good point you make about, no, you're good. Like the enablers, the power comes from the enablers in a lot of ways. Like if you look at like an abusive relationship, the enabler gives the abuser some power by staying in the relationship, by still saying I love you and stuff like that. Like to the same extent, like it's the tax slaves, the ones who say like rule over me, like there needs to be a government. They're the ones enabling the initiation of force. They're the ones who say taxation is necessary, stealing from you is necessary. Oh, who cares if you get thrown in prison? Like that's your punishment for not contributing to society. Like these are the enablers, the people who vouch for it. So you're very right that the power comes from people's minds, and that's why we change people's minds so that they no longer support it. I mean, imagine if everybody, and I guess I can't say everybody because there are those who are in power, but say everyone who's not in government power was like, what, fuck this, like I don't want to support this system. You went to a war like using my money, I don't want to pay you anymore. Like what if everyone did that? They wouldn't have that power anymore. Although it would be really bloody because they would probably like do everything they could with their resources to do something about it. But yeah, so
well, that's an interesting idea. I don't necessarily. Well, this is why it's our job to do what we do, right? Because the more people that we can talk to and reach and affect the way they think, the less rough and bloody the transition will be. Right, because you're right. The people that you really do need to reach are the law enforcement officers and the soldiers, right? Because they're the people that really provide the teeth for all these political scribbles, laws, rules, and regulations that are flooding out of Washington, right?
But that's a lot easier said than done.
True.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I suggested as like a mass amount of people just rejecting it. I mean, I don't know how realistic that would be. Definitely the transition to anarchy is one to be debated. And that's a whole nother debate. And I think that's separate from the principles because it's hard to, understand all the different factors that could happen in a transition. And like how we would go about, dismantling government. But I personally think and agree with the proposed like not-for-profit government model. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No.
Yeah, it's not like a really popular thing. It's just based on an article that I read from volcomic.com. the person who makes the Voluntaryist comic series. Have you heard of those?
Yep.
Cool.
Awesome.
I don't know if
Awesome.
it's like,
Awesome
yeah,
comic books.
no,
Okay.
he wrote a cool article about it. Just what he thought was how we would transition, and it would first like be, you know, keeping not like the military and stuff like that, but first making taxation voluntary, like that's the biggest part of it, and then allowing people to compete with government services, but still having the, I guess, necessary, like the institutions in place while we transition to a free market, and allow the free market to innovate and catch up and for people to compete. So government just becomes another business. He calls it not for profit, but I just see it as another business, because the only difference between a government and a business, in my eyes, or I guess in a really simplified way, is one can force you to be its customer. One can force you to pay for its services, no matter how dissatisfied you are. And there's no recourse, versus a business is like, oh crap, in order for me to keep you as a customer, I need to please you, or I need to remediate any wrongs that I've done to you. You know, so making taxation voluntary, I guess that's just the number one thing about that transition model is making taxation voluntary, and, you know, allowing people with their wallets, like they do now for other businesses, goods and services, to vote with their money on what they think is necessary. So, you know, in that, if that was the case, like, I don't know how many people would, you know, be voting for, or like paying for the NSA, like, oh yeah, keep spying on me or something, like. So there's different things, but yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so definitely, you know, I agree with you. What you say. You know, fundamental difference between the state and a private business is the idea of being voluntary, right? And if so, in this idea, if taxation is voluntary, the way I look at it, it's no longer called taxation. It's called
Exactly.
a fee.
I know.
It's called you know. The price of a good or a service, and
Right.
and also in this idea, I mean it's kind of convoluted, because I mean, okay. So here's the way I look at it, right? I don't really recognize that the state even exists, right? So the way I look at it is it's the idea of statism that I am seeking to dismantle, right? I don't say to people we need to abolish the government, right? Because fundamentally, it's not really a government. It's just people, men and women, forcing you to pay them. People who believe they have an exemption to morality that we're all subject to, right? Because if we believe that there's a separation, me and the government are like, damn, they're the government and we're us. What can we do? You know? And so, but when you look at it, you strip them away of their badge, of their costume, of their uniform, their status, and you say, this is just a person believing they have power over me. And they don't, right? They don't. They have no legitimate power. And so I kind of like it to look at it that way. Like it's more like Toto pulling, you know, the curtain of the Oz, the Wizard of Oz, right? And seeing that there's just an old man,
Right.
just an old man behind the curtain, right? It's one big illusion that we all are supporting by our participation, right? And one analogy that I like Stefan Molyneux made a while ago was people support the state in the same way that it's like we're all blowing hot air and keeping a balloon up in the air, afloat, right? And all we have to do is stop blowing, and the balloon will fall down.
Right. Yeah. I get what you're saying. It's part of it's a concept,
Right.
but I think that's just the first step. There definitely has to be a transition.
Right.
But yeah.
So, and the other thing is, yeah. So the idea of it being, you know, will it be violent at all? You know, I just tell people, I think what you need to do, like first of all, I'm not an anarchist or voluntarist because, let's say, because I'm certain that there will be a voluntary society. Well, actually, I'm pretty certain, but not because I'm certain that I know the future, but just because that this is a moral and compassionate way to live, right? I'm living based on principles. That's it, right? I don't need to know the future. I don't need to know how the poor would be fed, or how, sick people would be taken care of without the state. I just know that taxation is theft, and there's no such thing as legitimate ruler, and the belief in authority is a lie. That's all I need to know, right? And and voluntary interactions and free market is what produces the maximum amount of prosperity, because and incidentally, is also the most moral. So that's basically the primary thing. So when I tell people, they're like, what can I do, to bring about the most amount of freedom? I'm like, just live your life. Forget about they even exist. Just forget about they even exist. Live your life in a moral, decent, humane, compassionate way. Raise your kids to be that way, and disregard the state. Avoid taxes wherever possible. Live an agorist lifestyle. Have a business outside the state. Raise your kids outside the state. Transact outside of the state. Do everything you can. Have your wealth outside of the state. Do everything you can to starve the beast. Starve it of your participation and starve it of your currency. And I think that is the best way to have the most peaceful, no assassination, no coup, no rebellion, no revolution necessary, right? It's just an illusion. That's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd add also, like, through your personal relationships, like, spread why you're doing what you're doing, and just like you're doing now, like why the state is illegitimate. It's an illegitimate concept. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I have to sometimes when I meet some new people. I homeschool my kids, so I'm meeting up with a lot of homeschooling mothers all the time, and so they're already critical of government school, which is nice. So I have like a foot in the door with them. So I'm like, all right, so if the government can't do education right, what do you think what else can't they do right? What do you think?
Right. I think getting to why government can't do it right is really important, though, to help people understand. And it took me a while of just, why would there be a defense agency in a free market? Like, why? Mm-hmm. And it all comes down to self-interest and incentive. And when you have government, which is a monopoly on force, the incentive structure changes. And that's why, things that the government does is all like fucked up because they mess up the incentive structure. So yeah, and that's why you have like crony capitalism, which is not actual capitalism. It's, government regulations mixed with capitalism, which actually creates a monopoly. So yeah. So, but I think that's really important to convey as well. Yeah.
I remember this guy on Facebook, Daniel Rothschild, that said, I don't like crony capitalism because people all they hear is capitalism. Oh, that's capitalism. That's the reason that this country is so messed up. You see, you're capitalism.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, it's crony. You missed the crony part. And so what he says is basically like saying crony capitalism is like saying crony lovemaking. Like rape is crony lovemaking. No, just call it rape. Because say a whole different word.
That's a good point.
So we shouldn't mix the two. So we should rather say maybe instead you could describe it as corporate fascism. That's maybe a more apt description of how things are right now. So crony capitalism is confusing to people too much. Because then we have to redefine. Yeah,
that makes sense.
We got to redefine.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about maybe minimum wage. I love that topic. One of my favorite topics. So what did you?
Love it.
Yeah. So what did you say in your video, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, in my video, I brought up a couple points, like how minimum wage actually increases the cost of a good or service down to the consumer. So it's not like it doesn't, I didn't say this in the video, but it doesn't take into account like, what an owner's spending on R&D. All they focus on is like, oh, the CEO makes this much money. And if he gave, $1 to everyone, then, whatever, they would have $1 raise or something. But they don't see that that's, let's say it's like 100,000 employees and he makes $100,000 or something. They're like, that's $100,000 he doesn't need. He could give it to the employees. But it's like, one, what value are you providing? Are you worth that $15 an hour? Like, if you are, then go find a job where you can. There's a lot of people who make well above the minimum wage based off of the value they provide. So there's only, people who make, who don't provide that much value, who, provide value below the minimum wage, whatever it is. They just don't. I lost my train of thought, but they just. It's funny because they can't just go somewhere else and advocate for their service. And also, I brought up the point that the real minimum wage is $0. And this is related to what I was just saying. It's $0 because that's how much you make when you don't get a job. Because let's say you're worth $8 an hour and the state forces everyone to pay $15 minimum wage. If you don't have the skills to make 15, the employer is not going to choose you. They're going to choose someone with more experience. So it actually decreases the number of jobs. And also raises the cost of goods and services as well, like I said. And it's also fallacious because I brought this up in the video too. If the minimum wage really created wealth, then why don't, instead of giving foreign aid to other countries, why don't we just tell them to raise the minimum wage? Why don't we just say, hey, do what we did, raise the minimum wage? But we don't. We give them tons and tons of money in foreign aid. So, yeah.
That doesn't actually get
and
to
Bernie Sanders too. Oh, sorry, what?
No, what were you going to say? Bernie Sanders?
I was just going to say, and Bernie Sanders is a hypocrite too. If you look at a lot of statists and their policies, or you can find what's fallacious by looking at the hypocrisy. So, for example, Bernie Sanders, we need a $15 minimum wage. That's what we need. That's the cost of living. And then he has interns that he pays $12 an hour. Right. I'm just that's the hypocrisy.
Right.
Or, the leftists, they're just when before Trump won and in the debates with Trump and Hillary, and the moderator asked Trump a question are you going to accept the results of this, election? Whatever happens if you don't win. He's I would only accept it if I win. So he was implying that the polls could be rigged by Hillary, and there's been a lot of evidence of that through WikiLeaks and George Soros. So it's funny. And then a lot of leftists were oh my gosh, you would question it. This is our democratic process. This is how it is. It's fair, whatever, and then as soon as Trump wins, they're oh my God, are you fucking kidding me? And they call for secession, and, it's just really silly. They only make moral arguments and principled arguments when it's fitting for them. But when it's not fitting for them, when it goes against, their best interest, they then advocate against it. So you can see this in a lot of places where it's a fallacious philosophy. So
when I talk about the no problem. So when I talk about the minimum wage with people, I talk about Walter Block's quote, which is, "It's not a mandatory employment law; it's a mandatory unemployment law." Because it doesn't guarantee anyone is going to have a job. And like you said, all it does is create a group of people that are automatically unemployed because they were priced out of the job market, right? Like you said, they are not worth that amount of currency per hour, right? It's people think that, what you get paid is so arbitrary. Let's just pay you $50 an hour.
Right.
No, exactly. There's a specific reason why you're getting paid $7 an hour, because if you could get paid 10, then you would get paid 10. But since you can't, then you're getting paid 7. So
exactly. These people don't know what ROI is. They don't know what return on investment means.
Right.
They don't even think about that. why does the programmer who actually codes your app make a lot more than, the person cleaning the toilets? Well, let's look at the ROI. Maybe because the person who programs the app is going to generate more money for you.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
Right, yeah. And basically, yeah, what it does is just cuts off the bottom rungs of the ladder, right? So people who get out of high school, which is kind of interesting actually, think about government school, like, they say it's so wonderful, we need to give our kids a broad education. 12 years, 15,000 hours of
God, it's so
government
bad.
indoctrination, and all these kids can do is flip burgers or work at KFC or work at Home Depot or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, Starbucks. That's all they're worth in the job market after 15,000 hours and 12 years. What a tragedy, right? Imagine if you had the freedom to choose what you wanted to study for 12 years, how many things could you master if on your own? How many skills would you have? And you'd be making a lot more money a lot quicker because you wouldn't have to memorize worthless bits of information.
Right. I mean, one could make the argument like, oh, well, we teach our kids like STEM and Common Core is a good thing. We're going to teach our kids the skills that are valuable in the job market, like programming. All kids need to learn programming. Like, so one could make that argument, but what they forget is, what does the child want? And how much does one retain when they're forced to learn something? I mean, ask anyone who hated math in school. Ask them, like, the different terms. Do they remember? No, other than the basic math that they use on a daily basis. They don't remember. They don't remember derivatives. They don't remember, like, like I'm even trying to. I can't remember, like, what's the limit of n as it goes to infinity or some stupid shit like that. Like, I've never used that again. I passed the test. I got an A, but I never use that again. It's not applicable. I don't retain it. Like, compare that to somebody who studied, math or something on their own out of interest. They retain it so much better. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I think the key is, the child, like, what do they want to know? And like, just imagine, like you brought up, how you said, how many skills could they master by now? Even if they mastered one skill, one skill or one hobby they got really good at, that would be better than what is now, where their mind's so scattered, they're shamed into, the system where if you don't get grades in these topics that someone arbitrarily determined that you need to know, they're in this mindset. They come out with no passions. They never, discovered what it was. I was actually listening to a podcast with Stefan Molyneux, and what was his name? I was like, I should send it to you. It was pretty good. Or I guess, sorry, I'm remembering a different conversation. He actually just had a call-in show with some random person who called in and asked about how they should homeschool their kid, or if they should send their kid to public school. So this was where he was talking about it. And he talked about how in the current public school system, kids don't have a chance because they're constantly being crammed like 40 hours a week. Actually, plus, there's going to school 8 hours a day, plus the homework and the studying. Oh my gosh, it's like more than a full-time job in a lot of ways. And it's unpaid.
Yeah.
And it's not voluntary. So, but he brought up a really good point that stayed with me, that kids don't get this aha moment. They don't get this moment where they're like, I love the guitar. I'm going to spend all my time doing this, because I love it. Or I love programming. This is what I love. This is my joy, because they're crammed all the time and forced to do this. They don't have that time to discover what it is. And even when they do, they don't get the time to indulge in it, because it's like, here's what you need to read. Here's what you need to study next. Then they're so tired out from school. And also, not to mention, a whole different thing, the social side of school, being with other little kids who may be from dysfunctional homes, and all that, like bullying and that sort of environment. Like, there's a lot. School is public government public school is evil. I mean, just what it does to a human being who's naturally curious. It just destroys their curiosity just because you're slamming them for 12 years, like you said, like 40 plus hours a week. Maybe you get this, you get the summers off or whatever, just with all this like crap saying that you need to know this. And if, you're not trying hard enough to know this, what's wrong with you? We need to do an intervention kind of thing. And it's like, Jesus, I just don't like this shit. Like, so that's how horrendous it is. And if you just look at a lot of people who graduate high school and college, like, just look how similar they are. Compare that to, I was looking at interviews of people from like Sudbury School.
Right.
I think we talked about this. Yeah. Where, at this, like I would love to open one, but it's like the school where people, there are some adults, but there's no like curriculum. It's not like, okay, you got to learn this, move on next period. It's just, hey, here's a bunch of resources. Here's books. You can go outside, do whatever you want. And the kids decide. Some kids just play video games. Some kids read, some kids cook, but they're choosing what they want to do. And I saw some interviews of graduates of Sudbury School. And the one common thread that I noticed between all of them is they had this sort of aha moment. They found what they were interested in. They found the hobby or the thing that would get them up in the morning, and versus now, like, I gotta go to McDonald's, like, with my language arts degree, like, oh God, I'm so happy with life right now, like I just compare it, like all these people, like I saw one guy who's like, all I did was play piano in Sudbury School, and he got accepted to a really nice music school playing piano professionally. He didn't really know how to read music because he always just learned how to do it by himself, just listening. But later he learned how to read music when it was necessary. You know what I mean? But he learned to love the music first, and that's the key. Or this other chick, like she was really into horses, and at the Sudbury School, she'd bring her horse and she'd ride around. They have a lot of land, so she'd ride around the whole place, and that's what she would do. And when she graduated, she just worked for a small business that dealt with horses, and then she kept moving up because she learned how to build rapport with her managers. She had an opportunity where they were like, hey, this manager's leaving. Do you want to be the manager? And she's like, oh, shit. Like, I don't have the experience. Like, you can do it. So she had to learn and grow on the job.
Awesome.
And then she moved up again. So, that's an example. People don't get these skills because they're not allowed to follow their passions in school. And it's really sad. Like, if you think of millions, billions of people who are put through public school, not allowed to pursue their passions. I'm not saying everybody, because some people, they, I would say it's a minority. There is something at school that they just enjoy doing, or some people just like challenging themselves and learning anything. So they just so happen to luckily be interested in the curriculum just because they love learning, just for the hell of it, just for the challenge. But most people don't. Most people would rather be doing something that they love. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would, awesome. Everything you said was awesome. Yeah, I love that school too. I heard about it. I read about it. I saw a couple of videos about it. Yeah, really cool. And when I talk to people about this, well, first of all, I say you can't really call what you learn or what you retain in government school as being learn. Like, you can't call that learn. Learning is voluntary. Learning, you do something because you love to do it. When it's involuntary, it's called indoctrination. If you're punished for not doing it, that's what that is. Learning is what you do when you love to do it. And for me, the most valuable things I remember and appreciate from school was stuff that I learned outside of school. Everything else, like the philosophy, astronomy, cosmology, theoretical physics, chess, piano, all that stuff, alternative medicine I was reading about too, juicing, all of that outside of school. I'm like, I had no desire to excel and get the highest grades and, be top of my class. No, all I wanted to do was make sure I I was average and passed, so I had enough time to do what
Right.
I really wanted to do.
Yeah. Right.
and
I wish I
go
did
ahead.
that. I was, as you know, I'm too much of a perfectionist. So I was like, I gotta get A plus all the time. So
Oh, really? Oh,
that was like, yeah, no, that was like my focus in school. I was like, what you would, the perfectionist, the one, you notice those kids. Some kids, like, they had to get A pluses no matter what. And I had some friends like that too, where if they got an A minus, they would be sad. And I was one of them.
Wow.
We'd be like, oh, we got A minus. Like, like, it's just, some people don't handle it very well. I
Right.
did notice some people, they were just like, I'm just going to pass. Like, they figured it out. They're like, fuck this. Like, I'm just going to do the minimum and pass.
Right,
I have to be here.
Right.
But some people are like, I need to prove myself. I need to get the A. 'Cause if I get all A's, that means I'm something. Like,
Yeah.
I totally fed into the
Exactly.
bullshit.
Exactly.
So,
And then there's a video. I don't know if you're familiar with Josie Wales. She worked with Larkin Rose, and so she has
Josie the Outlaw?
yeah,
Or-
Josie the Outlaw, right? So she has a YouTube
Oh,
channel,
okay.
YouTube channel, Josie the Outlaw, and so one of her videos is called "A Prison by Any Other Name," right? And so it draws parallels between government school and prison. Right? Fascinating, excellent video. The bells.
Yeah, she has some good stuff. I wish
yeah.
she'd do something recent. It's been a while.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I guess
Been
she's
busy like me.
I guess she's been inactive, but yeah. So I guess really quick before we finish up, maybe talk a little bit about the other one, the why focus on principles, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. So yeah, this video, I partially liked it because I like acting. Partially. I mean, like, I'm saying I partially like the video. I really like acting.
Okay.
And so I got to make clarify. And so I liked making accents and like making fun of a hillbilly or something. But no, this video, basically I talk about why it's important to focus on principles. But I guess a precursor to that is develop principles. Develop sound, consistent principles that you can apply universally. So like nonviolence. That's a principle that all voluntarists strive to spread and universalize. And, they say all human interactions should be voluntary. That's a principle. There are no exceptions. There are no exceptions to principles. If you make an exception to a stated principle, you can't claim to have that principle. Now, there is a difference, though, when it comes to pragmatism. For example, voting for Donald Trump over Hillary, just to stop her, because pragmatically you think that, he would stop her. That's a little different. But when it comes to voicing, the exception, that's when you can't claim that you have a principle. And it's really important because if you make exceptions to principles, you then develop all these different excuses and suddenly the ends justifies the means. And that's a terrible I forgot what I called it. It's kind of, you could say it's a principle or a rule, but it can't be applied universally. Like, because you wouldn't do that for yourself. Like, if you said the ends justifies the means, so what does that mean, the ends? Like, you steal from me or something, and you're richer. So that's the end, so you're richer. And, like, that justifies the means of you stealing money from me. You could, like, it's not a sound, consistent principle, if that makes sense. I don't know if that was a good example, but I'm trying to show that a sound principle could be universally applied. So
I thought that was fine. Yeah, it has to be universalizable, right? As Stefan Molyneux would say, I guess universal. What's it called? UPB, universal.
Universally preferable behavior.
Preferable behavior, right. Like,
right.
Like he says, we can't all live in a world where we're all stealing from each other and we're all, assaulting each other, but we can live in a world where we're all interacting voluntarily with each other, right? That's entirely possible.
Right.
So,
I like what he called it. Like, he wasn't necessarily saying morality is like objective, like there's good and I can show it to you. I like how he called it universally preferable behavior. Basically, it's what's what behavior is preferable that all humans can agree with is preferable. Like, unless you're a masochist and you have some sort of dysfunction, like, you're going to agree that it's preferable you don't get raped or beaten against your consent, you know? But even then, I guess, the masochist, this is me maybe over philosophizing, but they consented in that situation, so whatever. But if you say, like, consent is the principle, all human interactions should be voluntary, then that's the key part. That can definitely be applied universally. I don't know of anyone, even a masochist, who would be like, oh yeah, I don't, you know, I think it's good if you just do things to me without my consent, even when I don't want, just do it.
Right.
You know, like, and one could argue and be like, well, if someone likes rape, then, but it's like, no,
then it's not called rape.
Like it's not rape.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
right. That's the thing.
Philosophy is fun because you define your terms and shit. But yeah, so that's why I like philosophy.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do on this show. We define our terms and shit. So very important.
Right. And shit. We define shit.
And very important.
We define terms and shit.
And shit.
Like poop comes out your butt. Anyway.
Definitions. Definitions are vital. Yeah. That's you know. I just want to tell you one thing. I have a relative who's a mathematician, and I was explaining to him about voluntarism, and I was saying that the principles that we're espousing were not created. They were not like laws and regulations just written down and created by people. These are discovered as being universal laws of morality. And like you said, it's not to say that they're, you know, objective. It's just they're universal in the sense that like laws of physics are discovered, laws of planetary motion are discovered, laws of mathematics are discovered. Now, you can have people that practice bad mathematics, but that doesn't invalidate the existence of the laws of mathematics. In the same way, you can have people that are criminals and that consistently violate self-ownership of other people, but that doesn't mean that there are no laws of morality, right? So all they're doing is violating the self-ownership of people and their property rights, right? So that was kind of an interesting argument, discussion I was having with him, because him being a mathematician, he was like, no, there's specific laws of mathematics, but there's not specific laws of morality. And so, yeah, so that's
honestly, that's a hard one for me. Like, maybe it's because I'm super literal. Like, oh, here's a pink sticky note. Anyway, like maybe, and I'm also random, but like maybe, you know, I'm super literal, but it's hard for me to, you know, understand if like what the laws of morality are. That's why I do like, you know, saying universally preferable, because that's what I can see. That manifests in reality for me, that universally this behavior, consent, is preferred by everybody. So, yeah.
Right. So going along with that, so that's the golden rule, which is, you know, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. But as Dave Painter from the Seeds of Liberty told me, like you said, a masochist might like to be put in a slave relationship, and a lot of people wouldn't like that, right? So then you have to amend that and say, well, maybe it's the silver. You should use the silver rule, which is don't do to others what they don't want to be done, or what you or what you wouldn't want done to yourself. So, or yeah, something like that. So it's the negative of that. But yeah, you know, you get the general idea. I mean, I think
right.
Most people are not sociopaths. Most people are not masochists. Most people are kind of even keeled. You know, understand basic laws of morality. You know, most people are decent people. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But we have to know there are people like that, so there is a limitation to the golden rule.
True. Yeah. Good point.
But, yeah.
All right. So I don't want to keep you any longer. So please reiterate your contact information if they want to follow your work.
Oh, okay. So you can find me on Facebook.com/DA, like duh, because the was taken, and then Pholosopher, so like philosopher but with an O instead of an I. Same thing with Twitter, it's duh Pholosopher, and then my YouTube is just a bunch of gibberish. But you can find all the links on my Facebook page. Even if you just do a search for the Pholosopher, it should come up. my page, and then within that are all my different links to like Twitter and YouTube. So yeah.
Awesome. Yes, please visit her YouTube or Facebook. Give her a like, subscribe, like all her videos. She's putting out some good stuff. We need more of this kind of. We need more liberty and volunteer speakers to promote the message, because it's such an awesome message.
That's true.
And I think it will transform the world. So one more thing before we go, I like to ask all my guests, what is your favorite quote of all time?
Oh shit, that's hard.
I like to.
Yeah,
I like
that
to
was
catch
my favorite quote of all time. It's just oh shit though.
Nice, I like that.
Dude, there's like, oh man.
I like to catch people off guard. That's my thing.
Yeah.
What do
Does
you
this
think?
happen a lot?
What do you think? This is going to be an easy conversation? Is that what you thought?
Yeah, what the hell, Danilo? I gotta sign up for this. Goddamn Hungarians break down a shitty wall. That's my favorite quote. No, I'm just kidding. It's like some random thing. It's like not philosophical. No, I'm just kidding.
The philosopher has spoken.
Just
What do you
fuck.
think?
Well, I mean, I just have so many. I mean, love is an involuntary response to virtue.
Nice.
Reason plus virtue equals happiness. The first step to knowledge is to know thyself.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I assume. So the second one is that Stefan Molyneux quote. Reason, or is that Aristotle?
Second one, I believe that's Aristotle.
Cool.
The first one is Stefan. The third one is Socrates, I believe. The first step to knowledge is to know thyself. I think that's Socrates.
Beautiful. So have you read any of the?
Seriously.
Have you read any of the like the Greek philosophical texts? Any of them? Like the Republic.
I've listened to some. Like think I listened to a reading of, I forgot, it was like Socrates' Trial by Plato. I forgot. But no, I haven't read extensively. So I need to. There's like, I have a gajillion. Like I even have a sticky note where I'm like, all right, I gotta read.
Nice.
I gotta read Mises, Human Action,
Nice.
Rothbard.
You still use
or
sticky
New
notes? What?
Hell yeah, I love sticky notes.
Who uses sticky notes? You got your phone. You got the notepad. Man. Interesting. All right.
It's because when I'm done with a task, I'm like, throw it in there. You know,
Right.
I don't know.
It's a
satisfaction.
It's a feeling of satisfaction, of accomplishment, right?
Right.
Nice.
Exactly.
All right. You can't
So,
discount
too many
that.
books to read.
Yes. Oh, well,
I don't know. Maybe I should read a Greek book.
No,
It's
it's
kind of
okay.
heavy. I don't know.
You know, it is what it is. I read Plato Republic. I read I think Aristotle Nicomachean Ethics.
Wow.
I read
Those like really long, heavy texts.
the Republic. It's a good, I don't know, 200-300 pages. I loved it so much. I read it maybe 2 or 3 times, which
cool.
I very rarely do. But
to write it.
yeah, that's Plato's most
Really?
famous thing. And then and then there was like that he wrote something, that Timaeus, like I think it was like chronicling the Socrates trial, and
Right.
I think that's about it. But yeah,
I wish Socrates wrote, but he couldn't. He was too busy like lecturing, and people could only write down what he said. But it'd be cool to hear his own voice,
Right.
you know, through the words. But yeah,
and
right now I'm just reading. Oh, sorry.
And I was
Go ahead.
just gonna say, you just reminded me of Socrates, because he was described as the philosopher, I think, by his people who came after him, like just the philosopher. That's how they described him. So
Oh, really? That's cool.
I made the connection. So you stole his intellectual property. So shame on you.
But I wasn't even trying to. Doesn't matter. we gave the government money, and that's why we own it.
It's okay. I'm sure he approves in his grave. It's okay.
Well, to be fair, I wrote faux.
Exactly.
So,
You changed it. So you changed it. It's all right.
Right.
You added. But awesome conversation. So
Yeah, I
everyone,
did too.
please, everyone, check out her pages: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Steemit, and follow her and like her post, because we need to help each other. And like I said, rising tide raises all boats. We have to help each other spread our messages, because I think they will truly transform the future for the better.
Sorry. You said spread, so it's getting late.
Yeah, it's all right.
I'm delirious.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to follow me, you can do so on Bitcoin, Patreon, or PayPal. Links are below. That's patreon.com/peacefulanarchism to help me out. $1 show is all I ask. I love to interview fascinating people like the Philosopher here, and I want to do more of it. And monetary compensation is always appreciated and encouraged, because in the end, we respond to incentives, right? We're capitalists in the end, so we respond to incentives like anybody. And even though I put these videos out for free, the time is not free. There's always opportunity cost to everything you do, right? There's always something else you could have been doing. And so there's opportunity cost with everything you do. So please help me out if you want to continue to see more of this stuff. So thank you very much for a wonderful conversation. This is Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network on theseedsofliberty.com and theconsciousresistance.com. Wishing everyone have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.
Bye, Danilo.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more of it, please feel free to donate and help me interview other fascinating people. You can do so through Patreon. That's patreon.com/peacefulanarchism to help me out. $1 a show is all I ask. If you feel so inclined to donate more, please feel free. It will only assist me in spreading the message of freedom and voluntarism that much farther and that much more efficiently. You can also donate to my Bitcoin. My Bitcoin address is in the description to my videos, as well as on my website, peacefulanarchism.com. And while you're on my site, there's a donate button to donate through PayPal. If you prefer to donate through PayPal, you can do so with that. But Patreon is a little bit easier for content creators, as you can set up a recurring donation if you so desire. Also, while you're on my website, peacefulanarchism.com, please feel free to sign up, enter your email address, sign up for my newsletter, and you'll receive updates every time I post something, a video or an interview. I do not send out any spam. Or you can also follow me on Facebook under facebook.com/peacefulanarchism or facebook.com/Danilo Cuellar 3, I believe. Danilo Cuellar 3. So either one of those methods, if you are able to donate, I would be most appreciative. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a magnificent day.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.